Hello everyone. Did you know that a single element essential for strong bones and teeth can also cause permanent crippling deformity if consumed just slightly beyond the safe limit? Today we are going to explore this paradox through the topic of fluorine and endemic fluorosis. Fluorine is an element defined by extreme reactivity and biological affinity. In its molecular form as F2, it has a low dissociation energy of 38 kilocalories per molecule, extreme electronegativity, and it is the strongest known oxidizing agent found in nature. Its reaction with hydrogen produces temperatures of 4700 degrees Celsius, which is hotter than atomic hydrogen burning in oxygen. In the environment, rainwater percolates through sedimentary, metamorphic, and igneous rock layers, dissolving calcium fluoride, which is calcium fluoride, and carrying it down into aquifers. This geological leaching is the primary culprit behind excessive fluoride, with concentrations reaching up to 157 parts per million in some water sources. Fluorine is never found in nature in its elemental gaseous form because it is so highly reactive. Once it enters the body, about 96% of the body's total fluoride accumulates in the bones and teeth. Fluorine is essential for the normal mineralization of bones and the formation of dental enamel, but because of its immense reactivity, its prolonged ingestion becomes a severe public health risk. This brings us to what we call the dosage paradox, which is about navigating a very narrow therapeutic window. A concentration of less than 1 part per million is considered the safe or desirable limit as set by the Bureau of Indian Standards. A concentration of 1000 to 1500 parts per million is safe only for topical use, such as in anti-caries toothpaste, and must be spat out, never swallowed. Once fluoride in drinking water crosses 1.5 parts per million, it becomes a global public health concern and triggers endemic toxicity. Levels of 3 to 6 milligrams per liter can trigger skeletal fluorosis, and levels above 10 milligrams per liter result in crippling fluorosis. Looking at fluorine as a two-edged sword, we see three zones. Below 0.5 milligrams per liter is the hypostate or deficiency zone, which is the primary cause of dental caries or cavities in pediatric populations and requires water fluoridation and topical treatments. The safety threshold lies between 0.5 and 0.8 milligrams per liter as the recommended range, with 1 milligram per liter as the Bureau of Indian Standards desirable limit. This is where fluoride plays its essential role in bone mineralization and durable dental enamel. Beyond 1 milligram per liter, up to more than 10 milligrams per liter, we enter the hyper state of chronic toxicity, leading to endemic fluorosis, which is a multi organ cellular affliction with irreversible developmental effects. Four clinical determinants decide how fluorosis manifests in a person, namely the age of exposure, nutritional status, the cumulative quantity ingested, and kidney clearance efficiency. Globally, around 260 million people inhabit locations with excessive fluoride in drinking water, defined as above 1.5 milligrams per liter. There are peripheral belts in the Americas and Japan, an African and Middle Eastern belt stretching from Syria through Jordan, Egypt, Libya, Sudan, and Kenya, and an Asian belt running from Turkey through Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, India, northern Thailand, and China. The most extreme benchmark globally is the East African Rift Valley, peaking at Lake Nakuru in Kenya with a staggering 2,800 milligrams per liter of fluoride. In India, fluorosis has an endemicity of 85 years. It was first detected in British India within the Nellore district of Andhra Pradesh and the Madras Presidency. Today, it is prevalent across 18 states and one union territory. The invisible thread lies in the fact that safe and unsafe water sources frequently coexist within the same communities, leaving populations unaware of their daily exposure. While the Bureau of Indian Standards safe limit is 1 mg per liter, concentrations up to 48 mg per liter have been recorded in Indian water sources. At the biochemical level, there is what we call the dermatan sulfate paradox. When fluoride enters the bloodstream, it interacts with glycosaminoglycans, specifically the sulfated isomer known as dermatan sulfate. In hard tissues like bones and teeth, where dermatan sulfate is normally absent, fluoride triggers its formation, resulting in hypomineralization and demineralization through breakdown of the collagen matrix. In soft tissues like ligaments and the aorta, where dermatan sulfate is normally abundant, fluoride causes it to disappear, resulting in ectopic calcification, which means abnormal mineralization in the wrong places. Dental fluorosis is not merely a cosmetic issue. It serves as a visible warning sign, the tip of the iceberg indicating severe and concurrent invisible damage occurring in the bones and soft tissues. Beneath this visible warning lies the hidden destruction of skeletal fluorosis, involving bone mass accumulation and crippling, and further systemic spread causing soft tissue and organ damage. There are three phases of fluoride toxicity compared across dental fluorosis, skeletal fluorosis, and linked disorders. Dental fluorosis targets the enamel of permanent teeth, develops during the first 7 to 8 years of life, and is irreversible once set. Skeletal fluorosis targets the neck, vertebral column, pelvic girdle, and major joints, results from cumulative lifetime exposure, and is also irreversible since no drug can mobilize fluoride out of bone. Linked disorders affect the gastrointestinal tract, muscles, ligaments, and fetal development, can occur at any age including in utero, and are partially reversible with early detection and diet editing. Dental fluorosis actually serves as a chronological record of childhood exposure. The tip of the tooth or the first permanent molar, referred to as zone 1, indicates exposure from the age of 2 years. The middle of the tooth or zone 2 indicates exposure from 2 to 4 years of age. The upper part of the tooth or zone 3 indicates exposure from 4 to 6 years of age. Clinically, it is important to note that this enamel hypomineralization is irreversible, and discoloration near the gums is due to poor hygiene rather than fluorosis. True fluorosis appears in developmental pairs and affects both the inner and outer surfaces of the tooth. Beyond the teeth and bones, there are early warning signs known as linked disorders. 40 to 50% of affected individuals present with gastrointestinal discomfort, including irritable bowel syndrome, nausea, and loss of appetite. 30 to 40% suffer from weakness and fatigue due to underlying muscle damage. 2 to 20% experience renal symptoms such as polyuria, meaning excessive urination, and polydipsia, meaning excessive thirst. A high percentage also suffer from low hemoglobin and anemia. These symptoms have historically been dismissed as non-specific, but ignoring them allows progression to irreparable crippling fluorosis. Skeletal fluorosis develops through cumulative deterioration across 4 phases. In the preclinical phase, the person is asymptomatic, with only a slight detectable increase in bone mass on radiography and normal functional capability. In phase 1, the musculoskeletal phase, there is sporadic pain and joint stiffness with osteosclerosis of the pelvis and spine visible on radiography and mild discomfort during exertion. In phase 2, the degenerative phase, there is chronic joint pain and arthritic symptoms with slight ligament calcification and increased osteoporosis of long bones, leading to noticeable limitation in flexibility. In phase 3, the crippling phase, there is severe joint limitation, muscle wasting, and neurological defects, with massive calcification of ligaments and the spinal column resulting in spinal compression and severe crippling deformities. This condition is progressive and often irreversible, which makes early detection crucial. To identify functional limitations at the bedside, three biomechanical diagnostics tests are used. The first is touching toes, where a healthy person can bend freely, but an affected person is unable to bend without folding the knees. The second is chin to chest, where a healthy person can bend the neck easily, but an affected person is unable to bend the neck. The third is hands behind head, where a healthy person completes the movement freely, but an affected person is unable to complete the full range of motion. There is also a unique dietary amplification syndrome linking sorghum, locally called jowar, with genu valgum, which refers to knock knees. This syndrome is characterized by severe genu valgum and lower limb osteoporosis, prominently observed in districts of Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu. The mechanism is that diets where sorghum is the staple grain actively promote higher biological retention of ingested fluoride compared to rice based diets. This demonstrates the critical intersection of agronomy, local diet, and chemical toxicity in amplifying disease severity. Laboratory confirmation of fluorosis rests on four pillars. The first is water testing with a threshold above 1.0 milligrams per liter using methods like the ion selective electrode, which is the most accurate but requires trained manpower, along with ESPAD-NIS or photometric methods. The second is urine testing, also with a threshold above 1.0 milligrams per liter. The third is serum testing with an expected normal range of 0.02 to 0.05 milligrams per liter. The fourth is radiography, where a forearm X-ray in a fluoresced individual reveals a calcified interosseous membrane along with enhanced bone mass and density compared to a normal forearm. There is also a grand diagnostic overlap that mandates dual testing: fluoride toxicity, iodine deficiency disorders, and anemia share overlapping features such as low intelligence quotient, cretinism, fatigue, low hemoglobin, and thyroid malfunctions reflected in abnormal free triiodothyronine and free thyroxine levels. The clinical trap is that children presenting with these symptoms are often misdiagnosed if tested in isolation. The mandate is that body fluids such as blood and urine, along with drinking water, must be tested simultaneously for both iodine and fluoride to avoid misattributing systemic fluorosis damage to simple iodine deficiency. The primary intervention for fluorosis is cutting the source, based on the core principle that fluorosis requires zero drug interventions and recovery relies entirely on halting ingestion. If a safe source below 1 milligram per liter is available locally, the strategy is strict division of use, keeping 20 liters of safe water per family exclusively for drinking and cooking, while restricting unsafe water to washing and bathing. If no safe source is available, one of four strategies can be executed. The first is dilution, mixing high fluoride water with low fluoride water to bring the average below 1 part per million. The second is harvesting, implementing widespread rainwater harvesting since rainwater is naturally low in fluoride. The third is pumping, sourcing surface water from distant, safe locations. The fourth is defluoridation, using the Nalgonda technology, which involves lime and alum flocculation, activated alumina developed by the Indian Institute of Technology Kanpur, or reverse osmosis, keeping in mind that the resulting sludge is highly toxic and requires specialized disposal. Biochemical recovery also depends on diet editing. On the withdrawal side, high fluoride water and fluoridated toothpaste should be removed, along with black tea, red and black rock salt often used in spices, and tobacco, pan, supari, and gutkha. On the addition side, vitamin C rich foods like amla, lemon, and sprouts help prevent damage. Calcium-rich foods like milk, yogurt, jaggery, and sesame help bind fluoride. Antioxidants like garlic, ginger, and white onion are beneficial. And breastfeeding is encouraged since breast milk is naturally low in fluoride. At the strategic level, India runs the National Program for Prevention and Control of Fluorosis, currently implemented across 157 districts in 18 states and one union territory. Its core fact is that fluorosis does not require drugs or medicines for treatment, and prevention along with dietary editing are the only cures. The program scope includes data and sourcing, linking with the Ministry of Jal Shakti for baseline water data, systemic integration with the Anemia Mukt Bharat program, recognizing the systemic link between fluoride and hemoglobin suppression, and capacity building through training of medical officers, laboratory technicians, and accredited social health activists, known as ASHAs. The path forward rests on three pillars: the molecule, where fluoride is understood as a highly reactive enzyme inhibitor and hormone disruptor, with systemic toxicity going far beyond dental mottling; the diagnosis, where we must look past dirty teeth, screen for soft tissue linked disorders, conduct dual iodine fluoride testing, and recognize the dermatan sulfate paradox; and the strategy, where pharmacological intervention is ineffective and the only cure is prevention through rigorous diet editing, nutritional supplementation, and safe water sourcing. Safe water, safe food, and a nutritive diet form the ultimate prescription for endemic fluorosis. Hope you have understood about fluorine and endemic fluorosis. If you found this video useful, please watch and share with your friends and colleagues. Thank you.